From Sweden, Her Excellency Ambassador Annika Markovic. From Thailand, Honorable Presiding Justice Sobchung Sukharunga of the Supreme Court. With His Excellency Ambassador Asha Vidyananda. From Ukraine, Chairman Gordovinko Victor of the Court of Appeals. From the United States of America, Ms. Diana Penelope Kempe, President of the ABA, American Bar Association, Task Force on the Rule of Law. From the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Gergely d'Affaires, Mr. Manuel Perez Iturbe. We are pleased to have you with us, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like also to acknowledge the presence of our development partners, whose generous support they have extended to the Supreme Court of the Philippines and helped make this conference possible. The American Bar Association, the Asian Development Bank, the Asia Foundation, Canadian International Development Agency, the Rule of Law Effectiveness, United Nations Development Program, United States Agency for International Development, and the World Bank. We would like also to acknowledge the presence of the honorable members of the House of Representatives, led by no less than the House Speaker, the Honorable Jose de Venecia Jr. We would like also to acknowledge the presence of the honorable members of the Cabinet, led by Executive Secretary Eduardo Armita. We would like also to acknowledge the presence of the members of the academe, civil society, business chambers, and bar associations. May I now ask Your Honors, Your Excellencies, to direct your attention to the screens as we show you an audiovisual presentation we prepared, which we hope will set the tone for our three-day conference. Ladies and gentlemen, liberty and prosperity.
Distinguished jurists, lawyers, diplomats, business heads, civil society leaders, academics, and high government officials from different parts of the world gathered here today for this three-day global forum on liberty and prosperity. In this keynote address, it is my purpose, 1, to follow up and explain in greater depth and breadth the twin concepts of liberty and prosperity. 2, to expound on how this global forum was organized and structured. 3, to illustrate how the speakers and the delegates may meaningfully participate, and 4, to discuss how the beneficent effects of these twin beacons of justice, as I am apt to call them, may be extended far and wide to the peoples of the world. May I also say at the outset that it has been my personal crusade since joining the Philippine Supreme Court more than 11 years ago to actively espouse and propagate these twin beacons of justice. Upon assuming the Chief Justiceship of the Philippines last year, I publicly pursued even more these concepts. Indeed, they have become the cornerstones of my magistracy. For that reason exactly, I embarked on a knowledge-sharing cum lecture circuit in May and June of this year. My aim was to broach and carry forward these twin beacons to jurists, legal practitioners, business heads, civil society leaders, diplomats, academics, and developmental agencies in several countries, especially the United States, Spain, France, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. In all my meetings with the various personalities and sectors mentioned, I was delighted to note the very warm reception given to liberty and prosperity. It was during those meetings that the format of this forum was ironed out and the initial invitations were extended. I am thus grateful to, among others, World Bank President Paul Wolfowitz and Asian Development Bank President Haruhiko Kuroda. Due to their inability to be physically present, both have graciously agreed to send video messages, which we will hear on Friday, October 20. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy and U.S. Court of Appeals Judge Clifford Wallace, who, despite their unavoidable physical absence in these 3 days, have ensured their participation through video conferencing from their location in San Diego, California. But we have personally here Chief Justice Guy Canivet of France and International Bar Association President Fernando Pombo Garcia, whom I both met during that trip in May and June, and both of whom will personally present their views and experiences on these twin beacons. I also thank those who encouraged me to pursue my advocacy despite their inability to participate personally because of conflicts in schedule and other reasons. Among them are President Rosalind Higgins of the International Court of Justice, based in The Hague, Netherlands, Chief Justice Willibord Davids of the Netherlands, President Francisco Jose Hernando Santiago of the Spanish Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of England and Wales, Lord Phillips of Worth Matraver, and Ms. Karen Mathis, President of the American Bar Association. On the same theme, several fora have also been conducted in my country over the past several months. In these gatherings were discussed not only the theoretical foundations of these twin beacons of justice, but more important, concrete ways of implementing them locally. The first of these domestic fora was the National Academic Forum, attended by distinguished and renowned scholars of the law in our country on July 20, 2006. This forum was followed shortly on August 24 to 25, 2006, by the National Forum on Liberty and Prosperity. It was participated in not just by justices and judges, but also by representatives of our legislative and executive branches of government. Also in attendance were law practitioners, business leaders, and civil society advocates. The resolutions passed during that forum outlined several plans of actions on how to implement the twin beacons in our courts in the legal profession, in the academy, in the government in general, and society. On top of these efforts, I wrote a book, as already been shown in the audiovisual, entitled Liberty and Prosperity. This book, together with a searchable compact disc version, will be circulated to all of you free of charge for the first time today. The lecture circuit and the domestic fora I mentioned, as well as this book, have encouraged our Supreme Court to sponsor this global forum to give the world community an opportunity to discuss liberty and prosperity. Fortunately, our aspirations, through the support of the United Nations Development Program, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the Canadian International Development Agency, the U.S. Agency for International Development through the Asia Foundation, the American Bar Association, and the rule of law effectiveness. In the next 3 days, we will share our national and sectoral experiences, mutually discuss the challenges confronting liberty and prosperity in various parts of the world, and draw lessons from them. As you may have noted from the printed program, we have invited a cross-section of the global society to discuss the country experiences of such countries as Canada, Benin, Singapore, France, Argentina, Nepal, Russia, Guatemala, China, Egypt, and those of the bar associations, academic and judicial institutes, development institutions, and other branches of government and civil society. I hope then that at the end of this 3-day forum, we shall have come to a mutual understanding of the principles of liberty and prosperity and mapped out some common courses of action to carry them out globally. An example of a possible project is a global foundation for liberty and prosperity, which will serve as a venue for a continuing discussion and sharing of ideas, experiences, and best practices by the various sectors and countries represented in this forum. In this search, the Foundation could also bestow international awards to outstanding personalities and programs advocating or exemplifying these twin beacons of justice. Let me now briefly go through the various events that have given impetus to liberty and prosperity as twin beacons of justice. The history of the world shows a long and arduous road to freedom. From the Magna Carta of the British to the French Revolution, and from the Declaration of Independence of the Americans to the struggle for nationhood of the Filipinos, calls for civil and political rights reverberated in the annals of our past. Liberté, égalité, fraternité, ou la mort, tierra y libertad, give me liberty or give me death. Mabuhay ang Republika ng Pilipinas. These were some of the battle cries for nationhood and freedom. Indeed, history rings for people's aspirations to be free, free to live peacefully, to earn a living, to participate in political processes, to vote and be voted for, as well as to speak, to assemble peaceably for redress of grievances, and to worship one's Creator the way one deigns among others. In these battles to uphold freedom throughout the past centuries, the judiciaries of the world have had to cope and innovate with a never-ending saga of fortitude and forthrightness. So too, they must now face up to new challenges brought about by the advances in technology and the demands of our ever-growing global community. Thus, even now, laws and judicial doctrines safeguarding liberty are continuously tested to the limits. Indeed, traditional conceptions of liberty have paved way to new freedoms. In the Philippines, for example, the right to conduct public opinion polls and to publish their results, a right born recently of the information age, is now considered an essential part of the traditional freedom of speech and expression. I am sure that many, if not most, of the countries represented in this forum have had to face similar questions in the past, and that they have given wise counsel as well as guidance on the legality of exit polls as part of the freedom of speech. Furthermore, recent money laundering activities and threats of terror have become new objects of calibration in the defense of human freedom. Very recently, our Supreme Court promulgated 3 landmark decisions involving: 1, the right of Congress to summon executive officials for investigations in aid of legislation, in conjunction with the people's right to information on matters of public concern; 2, the right of citizens to peaceful assembly for a redress of grievances; and 3, the right of the people under a declaration of, open quotation, a state of national emergency, close quotation. In all these 3 cases, our Supreme Court upheld the primacy of civil liberties over governmental actions. The struggle for civil and political liberties by other judiciaries are, of course, just as long and arduous. An example is the Cour de Cassation, the highest court of France, in a case involving a former official whose employment had been terminated by the African Development Bank. The French court ruled on January 25, 2005, that the right to a hearing before an impartial tribunal prevailed over jurisdictional immunity granted by a state to international organizations.